College Football Enquirer. I am Andy Staples with Ross Dellenger and Steven Godfrey. And we had quite a day of football on Saturday. Steven Godfrey, we are both in various parts of Georgia because we were at Sanford Stadium on Saturday night watching Georgia dominate Texas in a way that maybe I'm not used to seeing from Kirby Smart. You guys refresh my memory. I thought going for it twice on fourth down in a 4-point game, scoring onside kick to steal a possession at the start of the fourth quarter, and then just pouring it on. That was the sort of trickeration that teams that could not stack that much talent had to do. But maybe Georgia in this era, that's how they can dominate. That's how they can crush a team. And they sure did. They made Texas look silly for the entire fourth quarter, and that turned into a blowout.
We can talk about what happened in Tuscaloosa. We can talk about what happened for one half in College Station and then the other half. Yesterday, as you know, when the clock hit midnight, I thought, wow, based solely off this performance and then looking at the body of the work and the rest of the league, Georgia is maybe the best team in the SEC heading into the playoff. And it was funny because I spent all day talking to Georgia fans and saying, you should be really happy with the 5 seed. You should let Texas A&M and Bama win out and skip. Remember that whole thing we talked about? And
I was with Georgia fans all day too, Godfrey. And it was so funny as South Carolina was killing Texas A&M in the first half. Like some of them were calling their SEC championship game ticket guy. Or texting him and saying, hey, get ready. And then it was dawning on them like, wait, we don't want to play in the SEC championship game. How do we get out of this thing?
No.
And then A&M comes back.
I had many people cheering on A&M because they're like, dude, we got to do 2 weeks in a row at the Benz before the playoff even starts. Yeah. Like that's
right.
Consumer
they play
fatigue.
the week before.
That's big time consumer fatigue, which I totally, that's not a rich person's problem. That sucks for any fan base to spend that much money. So it's really hard, though, Andy, after last night with the defensive performance, throughout, but really this, I feel like it was an established statement. I was in the stands, by the way. I was on the 16th row. By the way, nothing better than live atmosphere. What the F, Bobo? Like as a living sort of entity, like watching a meme in real time. It was so beautiful. Well, which they did tamp down in the second half, but it was still there.
Yeah. I was going to say when they converted the 4th and 1 with a throw to Bowers on that drive,
everybody got quiet.
I was going to say they were saying we're sorry, Mike Bobo, because that was a hell of a play call. That was a great play call.
It was the 2 drives towards the end of the second, going into the half, where everybody really kind of started chirping. But guys, this was the 2025 full complete Georgia, because it was get back on your heels, read and react on the first defensive drive. Texas scoots down the field, a lot of run plays, kicks a field goal. Okay, all right, kind of feels like, all right, we're just evaluating here, and then that was it. Georgia's front was dominant. It looked like from where I was about 14 rows up on the home side, and you could actually hear a lot of the players and coaches talking on the Georgia side, but it felt like Texas was purposefully limiting what Arch was doing in terms of decision-making, and it just did not matter. And then combined with, I was in the middle of a conversation with someone when the onside kick happened. That was the most incredulous I have seen a major fan base in years. People could not believe that they called that play.
Yeah. I mean, think about like Kirby's like past and stuff, you know, like, it doesn't really fit at all. But yeah, Andy, you're going to say like, probably they showed Kirby and he had he was like really intensely watching before the kick. It's kind of like, you know, maybe almost giving it away.
Kind of smirking. He's kind of smirking.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like that Nick Saban smirk, remember, against Kirby in the SEC championship game.
No, it wasn't.
They did an onside kick, right?
It wasn't against Kirby. It was in Kirby's last game as Alabama defensive coordinator. They were playing Clemson in the national championship game, and they could not stop Deshaun Watson in the Clemson offense. And so that's the first thing I posted was that Saban grin after that onside. It was a sky kick. But 2021 Georgia with Jalen Carter, Trayvon Walker, Jordan Davis in the D-line room doesn't have to do that. Like they're just going to, when they're not going for it on 4th and 1 from their own 36, they're just punting that. And then they're not stealing a possession with an onside kick because they don't need to. But this Georgia team does. And I kind of wonder, I want to ask you guys this. This Georgia team playing that way with Gunnar Stockton and the offense playing as well as they are, we keep talking about who in the world can beat Ohio State. The fourth quarter Georgia from last night can play with Ohio State.
Yeah. I mean, defensively and just up front, right? I think Texas had like 25 yards rushing or something like that. And I didn't watch the whole game, obviously, like you guys did. I don't know if they stopped running at various points or they were just running into a wall, perhaps, the whole night.
A little of both.
But yeah, I mean, but you're right, Andy. I think when you look at teams, and we talked about looking at teams around the country who can win a playoff game, but how about answering the question that you just asked, who can beat like the Ohio States? I think, right, there's probably only like 3 to 4 of those maybe. And Georgia defensively feels like it has the team to do that. And honestly, despite Godfrey, the chance of the Bobo stuff, like Georgia's offensively been really good this year.
Yeah.
You know, they've been really, really good. How much better do you want them?
Well, you know, it is sort of a trope amongst Georgia fans, and there is always an expectation you could be doing more. And it did. Now, the second quarter did feel like they did not. It's so weird to talk about this game now in 4 complete quarters. The second quarter did feel a little bit like old Georgia. We're going to be aggressively conservative, right? Our defense is playing well. We've adjusted to what they're doing. Arch was just never getting a chance to look down the field. And when he did, there were some bad throws or some overthrows. There's so much more I want to talk about, maybe more in the offseason of like, I wonder what Sark has to offer up here in terms of change on the staff or what they're going to do moving forward. But Georgia felt like old Georgia being conservative. And then again, I go back to it, the onside kick after the touchdown and then the aggression with which that they really the next 2 or 3 drives, that was backbreaker playmaker stuff, Andy. And that's not what we're used to. We're used to let's boil this down and I always call them 2012 Alabama, like pre-Kiffin Alabama.
Yeah.
And that was not last night. That was a dynamic, different brand of Georgia football.
And one reason is Gunnar Stockton's good. I think there's still this image of Gunnar Stockton is the guy who came in because Carson Beck got hurt in the SEC championship game. He's the guy who'd been there on the bench, and he's still sort of a placeholder till the next 5-star comes in. No, one, Gunnar Stockton was an elite quarterback recruit, and 2, he's the straw that stirs the drink for them. He is very dynamic. He can run. He's a very good sound decision maker. And you watched him throw guys open, figure out where the weaknesses were in that defense. And I think he and Mike Bobo have done a tremendous job this year. And like Godfrey said, you sort of grow up in the state of Georgia now at this point. Like there are babies whose first sentences are "run the damn ball, Bobo." And it's it's more of a joke because like in Bobo's first time around as OC with Aaron Murray days, their offense was awesome, but they got mad because they remember when he didn't run the ball on the goal line against South Carolina. Like that's college football fandom and especially psychotic national title contender fandom. But they are doing a tremendous job.
The pre-snap motion stuff before the 4th down conversion, where they just kind of flick it out to the tight end or whatever. That was art. Like when the replay went up, I was talking to Georgia fans around me. I was like, that's artful. You cannot argue. Like that's excellent offensive coordinating. You have to let it go.
He slipped the back out into the flat and there was nobody there. It was 4th and 1. It was an incredible call because the motion moved everybody away and the back just replaced where those guys had left. So
and it was a well executed pre-snap. Again, all of the tropes of what are you doing, Bobo, or fire Bobo? Like, I get it. You aren't Lane Kiffin, but at the same time, they did everything they needed to. And I being here, Andy, the incredulity of the aggression on offense, specifically in the third quarter to put away an opponent, I would say is philosophically different than almost everything else in the Kirby Smart era. Maybe the Monken. Like when Monken was there as OC, they were a little bit more. They'd be a little bit more chancy about picking plays and extending drives. But off the top of my head, I just feel like that felt like a very different Georgia, and one that almost said like, "Hey, we're here, we're complete." And really, they feel like the most dangerous team coming out of the SEC. We can bridge into other teams here because the physicality of that team. I was thinking about this in the physicality of Notre Dame. It's like. And Kirby kind of not went off in a bad way, but really hit on this in the post game.
I saw that quote.
Yeah.
It was a really good quote.
Embracing the nastiness, and you talk about bringing them down to the water, which is about as old Southern redneck as it gets. You take somebody down to the water, if you know what that means. Those are the teams right now that you feel the most confident about getting behind going into the playoff. Oregon's one of those teams. Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Notre Dame. It kind of feels like, we're going to talk about those 4 a lot as we get ready for this bracket.
This is the quote from Kirby. A lot of these kids want to check. They don't want physicality. If you do have the check and no physicality, you will end up with nothing. You're not just getting checks at our place. We're hitting people.
Well, and I think that works so well because it's not doing the Dabo Sweeney thing of denigrating what's happening in college football with NIL or Rev. It's just saying, earn it. And I think everybody from all the ideological sides can get behind that.
That is a shot at Sark in Texas. That's what that is. This is him. It's the same as Kirby Smart in 2021 after they beat Florida, saying we're going to recruit elite players 24/7, 365 every day. That was him taking a shot at Dan Mullen, and Dan Mullen melted down 2 days later at his press conference when he got asked about it. That was a shot at Texas. That was you pay top dollar, but those guys don't want to hit. They don't want the smoke. And that is, it'll be interesting when Sark gets the question on Monday, because he will, about that statement. Because I was in there with Sark, and he was being asked about, just play calling, decision making by him and his staff. It was more of that. And to answer your question about the running, he basically said, we just ran out of opportunities to run because we were down, which is not true. You were down 4 with 2 minutes left to go in the third quarter. You chose not to run the ball very much. But this brings us to Texas. Texas now has 3 losses. They do have a game against Texas A&M coming up, which that would be one of the best wins in the country if they could win it. But I think they're out. Am I wrong, or is there a chance that they can work their way back into this thing?
I think the win over Texas A&M would be remarkable. Obviously, that's a team that you apparently can score against, as we saw yesterday. They start missing field goals again. You can run up on them. I'm not going to profess to know the alchemy of what the committee is going to do, but it feels like they're out. I would be really curious if they had a statement win against an undefeated SEC opponent in the last week of the season. How much that could push them they would be the last team in, right, Andy? If there was a 3-loss team from the SEC,
I would. Here's the thing: they could get in, and they have to just sort of root for multiple teams in the conference that they beat to lose, right?
Yeah.
Like Oklahoma would need to lose to either LSU or Missouri. Vanderbilt needs to lose at Tennessee. Then they'd be all locked, and of course they need to beat A&M, Texas, and they'll be all locked up at 9-3. And Texas would have wins over those 2 SEC schools and maybe get the nod if things break right too in the Big Ten. But that it would be really tough. Alabama could be at 9-3 too, and if Alabama's at 9-3, they're probably out, right? With the loss to Florida,
they would have lost to Auburn.
But that's the only way I think of the 5th SEC team is Texas. Is if Oklahoma and Vanderbilt both would lose. And it's possible, right?
Very possible.
And host Missouri, host LSU, and Vandy at Tennessee.
Texas's argument there is going to be, we could have not scheduled Ohio State and we would be 10-2.
Yeah.
And I think that's a legitimate argument. That is, you don't want them to not schedule. You don't want to disincentivize scheduling those games. Right. But I still think there's probably going to be enough teams that have stronger resumes that are going to be in. More than likely. Like you guys said,
Oklahoma feels like it's going to be in. And which is going to be crazy. And it's going to be an argument. Wait till the people in Austin, if they beat A&M, think about this, guys. If they beat A&M and they're 9-3 with a blowout win over Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is 10-2 and gets in over them. Oh, my goodness.
I don't want to spend an offseason doing the playoff is hurting scheduling because up until this point, we've said the exact opposite, and we've had the data to back it up. We want to incentivize these big games, especially amongst the big 2 as they move both towards 9-game schedules. We want to start the season in a celebration. We don't want everyone playing Long Island University. Okay. We don't want, we want the product to reflect what we feel about the sport. And so you bring up a really good point, Andy. Also, they lost by 7 to Ohio State. I know that feels like a university, but it wasn't like they got blown out. Yeah. I don't want to reward losing, but I have defended the committee for pushing the phrase scheduling intent, because I do think that that's an important thing for the sport, not for the playoff, for the sport.
Let's talk about Oklahoma now. Oklahoma goes to Tuscaloosa. They beat Alabama. Alabama still controlling its destiny for the SEC championship game because they have a non-conference loss to Florida State. But Oklahoma, we had pretty much buried them after they lost to Ole Miss. And guys, I don't know how much of this is just John Mateer getting healthy again, but he looked dynamic. He looked like he looked at the beginning of the season in Tuscaloosa yesterday. And I like Oklahoma against a lot of the teams that would be in the playoff at this point.
I think it is healthy, Andy. I mean, watching the loss to Ole Miss and again, not a quarterback, or neither am I a quarterback coach. People said, if you look at the way the ball was leaving his hand, combined with some of the decision making. Now, a lot of teams got pass rush on him. I think they did figure it out to a little bit of a degree. Then he got hurt, but he's looked like September. He looked like the guy who was beating Michigan yesterday, for sure. Now, what's fascinating about this is we're talking about a team. And we should be. I'm not trying to say anything against Oklahoma. We're talking about a team that lost 2 games in 3 weeks in conference play before November, which kind of feels like a death sentence, right? Certainly would be a death sentence in any other era of college football. Now they're poised to potentially win 4 on the backstretch in conference play and get in. I'm fine with that. I'm not questioning that. It's just interesting how we think we know what's keeping teams alive and what's knocking them out. And when you lose 2 out of 3 in 3 weeks, it feels like you should be done. And they're very much not. So it's just interesting to me how we're going to recalculate and kind of figure out these teams, next season.
Well, can the committee also not say it's clear that they're different with a healthy Mateer?
Oh, they can.
They could say that, but I think they would need to say that out. Wouldn't they need to say that out loud on the final?
I mean, they may mention that, right? I mean, heck, we all remember what happened with Florida State and the quarterback injury stuff, and they said that out loud. I would think that they would. The thing that impressed me about Oklahoma that makes me think that they got a real shot, to win some playoff games if they get in. They went on the road in 2 of the most difficult places to play, Tennessee and Alabama, and didn't play super well offensively and managed to win the game with just sort of a turnover prone, whatever, harassing defense, right? They end up have 3 turnovers. I think Alabama had 3 turnovers. They turned into 17 points, 4 or 5 maybe sacks. I mean, they did the same against Tennessee, right? Without the turnovers, I don't think they beat Tennessee either. It's just man, this defense is playing really opportunistic, I guess.
Yeah, that sack on Ty Simpson, where the ball just basically explodes. Ty Simpson explodes and the ball goes flying. It was, you haven't seen Ty Simpson get hit like that all season. And it was impressive. Now, I do want to point out that this game, apparently, if we're just doing the math on the score, turned on a Ray Finkel moment. The Alabama kicker, Connor Talty, screaming at his long snapper as they were going to the half because he missed a field goal. Now, Oklahoma had a rusher that jumped the long snappers. There was a high snap, but the holder got it down. Oklahoma had a rusher jump over the long snapper and might have gotten either a finger on it, but definitely got in the kicker's field of vision. And it was not an easy situation for him. But I have never seen a kicker yell at a long snapper in public. Yeah. I've seen it in private, but I've never seen it in public. And this is not one of those new age, new breed of jacked NFL kickers. This is a kicker. This is what you imagine when you imagine a kicker.
It's a get your ass kicked kicker for, yeah.
I had never seen that. And I'm like, and somebody on Twitter pointed out, thank God Alabama doesn't have a live mascot, because if they did 15 years from now, it would be in trouble. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, your education in cinema classics is lacking. You need to go watch Ace Ventura.
You are not a cinemaphile. Yeah. Show me your Letterboxd.
I was laughing as that was going on, and then I'm realizing as the game is getting tighter and Oklahoma is about to win by 2. I'm like, oh my God, that field goal decided the game.
Yeah. We get a fun week of burn it all down and fire Kalen, of course, as you do. Obviously, with no context or any kind of informed, analysis there, then they'll be fine. They're obviously still poised to win the Iron Bowl and go to the playoff. But it's been a minute. It's fun. We still get to treat every Alabama loss as a sort of special reminder of the way things were for the, that 15-ish year period between, I guess Stallings and Saban. So, but yeah, I mean, overall, like Alabama's fine. I've seen a lot of their weaknesses exposed type analysis early on this morning. I don't know if that's the case so much as you might just want to chalk that one up to as this is more NFL-ish than we want to admit these days. I don't know if these games are meaningless. I don't think that yet. I keep going back to this every game we talk about. Should be really curious how we contextualize games like next season, because it has felt like just the top 3 games in the league in the SEC every week for the last 5 or 6 has just been a fist fight you have to survive. And up until I would say last night with Georgia, it was really hard to find separation in that top 5 or 6.
Yeah, we're seeing that. We're seeing them all beat each other up a little bit. If you look at the standings, there's at least 4 with 1 loss or no losses, and another 3 with 2 losses. It's just. And, we're going to get to it later, I know, but A&M came very close to having 1 loss as well.
Alabama, it'll be interesting to see where they wind up in the committee's rankings. They're going to be below Oklahoma. So, this might wind up getting Alabama sent on the road in the playoff, which is...
Yeah, probably. Also, let's keep in mind, Auburn went on the road and almost beat Vanderbilt. They're really talented. I mean, we talked about it all season, how much resources
it's that Jordan Hare
poured into the. I mean, it's
Durkin,
sort of setting up for what to happen.
Durkin met with. I mean, Durkin is technically, officially, put an asterisk next to it if you want to, a candidate to become head coach. He's done his song and dance to do that for interviewing with Auburn. They're not going to come in and lay down. They have a good defense. They have one of the best defenses in the country. They just inexplicably also had one of the worst offenses.
So you just mentioned the A&M game, Ross. When we come back, we're going to talk about 2 narrow escapes. One in the SEC, one in the Big Ten. One keeps a playoff run very much rolling. The other keeps a playoff hope alive. We'll talk about it when we come back. We're back at the College Football Enquirer, and if you want to see us in living color, go to the Yahoo Sports Network. You turn on your smart TV, you find that icon, and then you can watch the College Football Enquirer in brilliant living color. Also, anywhere you go, anytime, day or night, tablet, phone, you name it, yahoosports.tv, and you can watch us.
Andy, real fast before we get to the day's events. You were on campus yesterday in Athens at UGA. I was as well. My other you had an On3 thing yesterday, right?
Yep.
With Ari. Okay, so my other show, Phantom Island, we had a big live event on Friday night downtown. 2 people saw you broadcasting and then ran into me and just went, Enquirer, like that. And then one guy who was a Georgia fan who's, very lubricated, said, I'm going to go try and find Ross and then I'll win a prize. And I was like,
there you go, buddy, to find me.
And all I said
all
I said was, he's around here. Just, I think you can do it. He's around here somewhere.
Nice.
So nice. I like to think of that guy just circling the portals of Stanford looking for you, Ross.
Dude, you're very good. Yes. He won't find me unless he's walking the strip in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Yes. It would have been quite a hike, but that's all right. Let's talk about the game that all the Georgia fans that Godfrey and I were hanging out with, were just enthralled by, and that is the Texas A&M South Carolina game. South Carolina takes a 30-3 halftime lead. 30-3. Shane Beamer is whooping up the crowd as he's heading to the locker room. Whoops. You're just assuming this is going to shake everything up, because A&M probably couldn't have played any worse in the first half. They kept getting in the red zone and not scoring, and South Carolina would cash it in And they finally ran the Nick Harbors faster than everybody play, which I always say, why don't you just run that every play? But it got so bad. And I don't know, when did you guys know? For me, it was the first drive of the second half when Marcel Reed just took them right down the field.
Look, I'm going to say something that it's going to sound pretentious. My Phantom Island co-host, Ryan Nanny, Florida fan, we were doing a thing, meeting fans at Creature Comfort downtown Athens. Shout out. And when they went into the half, he said, South Carolina is not built to manage this. They are. And then you're commenting the first drive of the second half, he looks at me and I'm like, oh yeah. I was like, we had to move around to go do meet other people. And then as we would sort of move from tailgate, we would just check and see scoring drive. It felt inevitable. All the Texas fans were loving it because they are so passionately angry about A&M being overrated. And then all the Georgia fans, a good portion of whom are Atlanta sports fans, are just standing there going, 28-3, baby. Like they knew the entire time. There was a feeling like South Carolina could not maintain that level of momentum because of the way that they built up those scores off of inexplicably bad decisions by Marcel Reed, missing field goals. Like it happened so fast on the front end, Andy. I felt like the better team, if they could just establish one good drive in the third, which they did, could then immediately arrest the tempo and shut down the momentum. And they did. I mean, it was one team for one half and one team for another half.
Yeah. Yeah. It was watching Marcel Reed for, I think it was 4 straight drives. Those 4 consecutive scoring drives that they had in the third quarter, and maybe they were the last one to take the lead was early in the fourth quarter. They did it all, 4 drives, like 15 minutes of game time, and he had like 300 yards passing on those 4 drives. It was remarkable to watch. They didn't even run the ball like very well. I don't even know they were in the ball hardly at all. They were dropping back every time and maybe letting him run a little. He ran around a little bit, but I mean, they just carved through South Carolina's secondary. I think in the end of the game, he ended up Reed with 22 completions for 439 yards. That's going to be the highest completion rate, per completion. One of the ones in the country this year. It was pretty incredible. And then the A&M defense, of course, right, didn't allow South Carolina to do anything. And I know that Trev Alberts, the athletic director at A&M, probably, and many of the board and boosters at there in Aggieville were certainly praying for the comeback because they sort of orchestrated this contract extension, which was agreed to on Friday night, late Friday night, with Mike Elko and this big new contract. And they were scheduled to announce it not Saturday morning, but they were going to wait till after the win,
of course,
against South Carolina, and announce it Saturday afternoon and get him to formally sign Saturday afternoon. So thankfully for them, the Aggies pulled it out and they were able to do the signing ceremony public and announce it and all that stuff.
Can you even imagine if they'd lost that game? And okay, this my working theory.
I don't think you do a public signing ceremony. I don't think they do that.
My working theory is that all the coaches that are going through this stuff, and Mike Elko wasn't talking really to people about other jobs. He was dealing with his own contract stuff. But it seems like the week that they do the most talking about all this stuff, their team doesn't play very well.
Why, Andy? Is that a segue into Florida Ole Miss?
Mm-hmm. It could be. We do have to talk about that later, but no, I want to focus on the narrow escapes for now, because Texas A&M, we established where Texas is, where Alabama is, where Georgia is. Texas A&M is in the playoff. They're going to play Samford. They're going to beat Samford. They're going to be 11-0 going to the Texas game. It does not matter if they win the Texas game. They are going to the playoff. Winning the Texas game puts them in Atlanta. Unlike Georgia, they actually want to play in Atlanta because they've never done it before. So this is, I mean, they've played a Peach Bowl or two, but they've never played in the SEC championship game. So there's a good Johnny Manziel Peach Bowl. But no, they have to.
The Duke game.
They don't have to win the Texas game, which I think probably is good for them. Probably don't need to put any extra pressure on that because they do want to win this thing. Remember, Texas won the last Big 12 Texas A&M game. They then went to College Station and won last year when it was winner goes to the SEC championship game. So it's a big deal for Texas A&M people, just as it is for Texas people. But
Yeah,
definitely.
Let us move to another narrow escape by a team that is not firmly ensconced in the playoff. It's one that has a bit of a pipe dream to get in, but considering they won the game I'm going to talk about last year, then maybe they could do it. But it's Michigan. And Michigan tried as hard as it could to lose to Northwestern at Wrigley Field. 5 turnovers to Northwestern's 0. They're throwing the ball when all they need to do is hand off every single play. Northwestern's not stopping them. They're throwing the ball. Like every mistake that Michigan could make, either from a player on the field or from a play calling strategy, philosophy perspective, they made. And yet they still had a walk-off field goal to win the game.
We have talked a little bit in the margins about Michigan's patience with Sherrone Moore. And Andy, you've kind of led that discussion throughout the season. This is the perfect win in which you don't lose the game, which is technically all that matters, and you solve none of the, you assuage no one. All of your concerns are still there. That team yesterday is going to get smoked by Ohio State. I'm not saying that's the team that shows up for that game necessarily, but you kind of have a known quantity in Michigan. I'm curious where that fan base is going to be at if they are outside the playoff after maybe getting smoked by Ohio State, because it's one thing to tolerate youth in development, but this was a very sloppy football team, which is something that they're going to burn out patience with more very quickly.
We've, like you said, Godfrey, we kind of seen this all year with Michigan. They're not they haven't put on very many like dominating sort of performances, and they seem to let whoever's on the other side of the ball stick around, including when this game, Northwestern and obviously Purdue last week too, kind of hung around. Bryce Underwood isn't quite, he's probably playing like a college football freshman, but maybe not playing like somebody that we all sort of expected or matched with the hype of the sort of off season of him. But the one thing Michigan does well, as Andy mentioned, is just pound the football. In what for whatever reason they threw the ball when they probably didn't need to, and it sort of let Northwestern back in the game at Wrigley Field, and that would have been a bad loss. We'd have gone into that. And by the way, I know we're talking about the game a lot, and it's kind of overshadowed any talk about with Michigan is the game. But like next week, they go on the road to a Maryland team that's I know lost like 5 or 6 straight, but that isn't bad. And so it could be an interesting, just another middling to low level Big Ten program that they're going to be playing, and can they get over that and not let them hang around, and store some confidence for the game.
If you look at Michigan's schedule to this point, guys, when is the last time you felt good about Michigan dominant in a quality win? I think it's probably Washington.
Yes,
and then
and it was
Ross, you mentioned you mentioned the Purdue game, and then I pulled up the schedule, and I'm like, okay, there was a lot of angst in the Michigan State game from Michigan fans that I talked to.
Yeah.
About a sort of incompleteness.
And that was close into the fourth quarter, right?
Right. I mean, and so then you start to look and you're like, okay, when have you been at your most confident this year? And I think they haven't really delivered that to calm the criticism of Moore, because you lose to Oklahoma in week 2, you squeak past Nebraska, and then the loss to USC. And so that's what they've been missing to this point, is just the Washington win is probably the most we executed our identity and our style and just completely blew you off the field. That's probably it.
Yeah, I remember the Nebraska win. They needed like 3 or 4 like 40+ yard breakout runs, and they did it. You can't like take that away from them, but they needed those couple of long runs to like put that game out of reach, because their defense wasn't playing great either.
They're a good football team. They're just not what they have been in recent years. And so how we shape this, is it a transition up, or is this signs of some sort of managerial issue? That's, I think, again, Andy, you've talked about this all year, of like a dissatisfaction with Moore. And I don't know if he's really going to have an opportunity this season to make them feel great about where they're headed.
Oh, he's going to have one. And the thing is,
I'm assuming
they're still better than they were last year, and they won that game.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I am assuming that the thing happens, and I should not do that. You are correct, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, with this particular one, I'm not assuming, because nothing could be more just what the hell just happened than Michigan beating Ohio State last year. So I will no longer assume anything. I do think Ryan Day and Ohio State philosophically have figured out we don't have to beat Michigan playing Michigan style. Like, you don't get extra points for that. You could just beat them playing the way you play your best. And so I don't think Michigan,
if you have the best wide receiver, if you have the best wide receiver on the field in the league or in the sport, maybe you should hit him a few times, target him a few times, just, real in-depth football strategy stuff.
Yeah. So but again, I will not dismiss the idea of Michigan beating Ohio State, because I did dismiss it last year and they won the game on the road.
Yeah.
And no, it would be
games at home. That's right. Games at home.
Yeah, it's at home. It is. It's at home. Yeah. And they may need the game to go to the playoff. They probably will, right? If they beat Maryland, they will need that game to go to the playoff. And if they win that game, I can't imagine, especially if Oklahoma goes 10-2, which is one of Michigan's losses. I can't imagine Michigan being left out, especially ending the year with a win over Ohio State. Yeah. So I think they're playing for a playoff spot to keep their season sort of alive. It's going to be interesting. Yeah.
Elsewhere in the Big Ten, Iowa jumps all over USC. Then USC scores the final 19 points of the game. Lincoln Riley called it a culture win, and I don't disagree with him. Like, that was not what we've expected from USC Lincoln Riley. That was a tough team. They got punched in the mouth, that came back, and now USC is about to go play Oregon in the biggest game of this coming week. And if USC beats Oregon, USC is in a nice spot to make the playoff, because they got that nice head-to-head win against Michigan, and they are they're sitting pretty if they can beat Oregon. Now, can they beat Oregon? I feel a lot more confident after what I saw yesterday that they can. I don't know that they will, but all my doubts about USC were what happens when they play a more physical team, what happens when they get punched in the mouth up front. And we've now seen a Lincoln Riley USC team actually come back from that in game, which is not something we've seen in his entire tenure there.
Always tough. Always tough to go in the rain in Iowa. Oh, wait, that game was in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But it was in the rain.
Iowa brought the weather. No, that's what I was cracking up. I was like, oh, wait, this is in LA. Yeah. Looked miserable. Looked, hey, you know what? They are Big Ten after all. Turns out LA is a Big Ten town.
Yeah, it was kind of cold too. It was like 60 degrees or something, spitting rain. Did you guys see Lincoln's kind of told me everything you need to know about how big, sort of important to him that game was, and the comeback was, like, just his reaction. I mean, it looked like, they'd won the national championship or something, the way he reacted, right? I mean, they were throwing the headsets and he was just fired up and down the sideline. And I think it is probably because of the way the team sort of bounced back. And man, I mean, I don't know. I know Ohio State's got a couple of really good receivers, but USC is right there, right, with Mekhi Lemon and Lane, Jacoby Lane.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're incredible, and Maeva's just putting it right on them too. Like maybe the last touchdown to take the lead was just beautiful, just a beautiful connection with his receivers. So they look good, man. Like when you look at, the one way that Michigan could get left out if they beat Ohio State, I guess, is if USC is at 10-2 too, right? And they compare the resumes and there's the head-to-head. I guess that's a possibility.
The Michigan win was another USC looking more like the more physical team. That one, USC was in control most of the game, as opposed to Iowa, where they had to come back. But we've had some instances like that, which do give you a little confidence as USC heads to Eugene, because Oregon is a very physical team. And I am going to very much enjoy the Pac-12 championship game next week in Eugene, because this is kind of what we got used to, seeing these teams with great athletes playing against each other. And I love the quarterback matchup, Dante Moore against Jaden Mayava. It's so much fun that this is I kind of wish it was in the Pac-12 and not in the Big Ten, but it's a fun Big Ten game now.
Yes, it is. I want to pivot slightly back to that game because we are a show that addresses like large scale narratives, right? About programs, about trends in the sport. I just want to point out on the record, the Iowa Hawkeye offense successfully executed the Philly special. And I am banning myself from making fun of Iowa's offensive football for at least 6 months. Friend of the program, Lucy Rodine, who works for the Levitard show, she was on the ground in Athens yesterday. She's an Iowa alum, big Iowa fan, and kind of weaving in and out of tailgates before the show. And I was like, "Hey, how are you?" And she ran up. She goes, "Iowa ran the Philly special. Ferentz didn't believe it. You know that he's just absolutely like gobsmacked now. Like they know that works, and he's going to have to run it again." So that was the most inventive I've seen the Iowa offense maybe in 10 years. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was impressive. And how about this? Because to maybe take it briefly off the field, we've been talking a lot on the show about the Big Ten capital deal.
Yeah,
and think about the two programs we just talked about, both of them, USC and Michigan, are sitting each at 8-2, and they're trying to get the Big Ten's fourth spot and playing this big game against Oregon, at Maryland. All these other schools want to do this capital investment deal, right? And USC and Michigan are pushing back against it, and here they are in the playoff race trying to get the Big Ten's fourth spot. And by the way, a day before, I guess, the game, maybe it was on Friday morning, Jen Cohen, the USC athletic director, released her most recent newsletter where she announces various things and talks about behind-the-scenes stuff of the program. And lo and behold, she spent a few paragraphs on the Big Ten private equity and capital deal and basically saying that, we're not in favor of it. I mean, she didn't come out and say that, but she might as well have, right? And she thinks that USC is a big enough brand and has enough value that they should, they should get more money, basically, is what she was saying. And if they don't, well, see, they're going to keep flexibility for the future, potentially even outside of the league. So here we have the on the field stuff with USC and Michigan, the two programs that off the field are sort of right now internally within the league fighting with their conference members.
I love that you've connected those things. And
if you're pure of bank account, if you're pure of bank account, you will succeed.
If you're not
That's
a
what
poor,
we're learning.
Yeah. A poor. Yes.
Let us look somewhere else at the intersection of on the field and off the field. When we return, we'll go to Oxford, Mississippi, where the off the field very much met the on the field in a very weird night. And that sets up some very interesting coaching carousel talk that will probably dominate the week. We'll be right back. We are back at the College Football Enquirer, and we've talked about the intersection of off the field and on the field, and nowhere was it more vivid than Saturday night in Oxford, Mississippi, where Florida, the program that would like to hire Lane Kiffin away from Ole Miss, came to Oxford and had Ole Miss on the ropes for 3.5 quarters. Ole Miss had no problem moving the ball up and down the field. It was a matter of getting the ball in the end zone, and then Ole Miss's defense, every time DJ Lagway would fake a handoff, would bite on said fake and then allow DJ Lagway to throw it over their heads, and did not figure that part out until midway through the fourth quarter. Guys, it would have been one of the funniest things in the world if the bad Florida team that wants to hire Lane Kiffin had beaten Ole Miss.
Man.
But it didn't happen. Lane got it together.
I still don't have a referendum on would that have made them want him more or less. It really comes down to the individual message board poster. It's like we're gonna beat you guys and knock you out. Like we want to knock you out of the playoffs so we can get your coach, but his team wasn't prepared and kind of sucked for most of the game. So why do I want your coach? Really like an Ouroboros logic here. Very, very tough to discern what Florida fans actually wanted.
Yeah. Thank goodness they had Keelan Lacey, by the way.
I would say Keelan Lacey was awesome, and the big run to set up right at the end of the third quarter that set up his score and at the beginning of the fourth quarter. that was what turned it around. That was, you said, okay, Ole Miss is going to be okay tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like 60-yarder right up the middle. But yeah, they couldn't tackle him all night. He ended up with 224 yards, 31 carries. They just, Lane, right? Everybody looks at Lane as the guy who's razzle-dazzle passing through the air, right? Quarterback whisperer sort of stuff. And man, he knows when to keep pounding away. And they kept pounding away at Florida's defense and just sort of milked the game away late there when they had a lead. As soon as they sort of got that lead, you thought Florida can't score quick enough, and Ole Miss was just going to sort of milk all the clock, and that's what happened. And then late in the game, of course, we had the chance of "We Want Lane" from the entire Ole Miss. Had somebody there sent me videos from the stands of "We Want Lane" chanting throughout the stadium, and then of course after the game they played. Who do they play? Who's Don't Back Down. Oh,
Tom Petty.
Tom Petty.
Who's a Gainesville native. Yeah.
Yes, Tom Petty and the Don't Back Down song that they play.
Which is what
I think Florida plays at the end of the third quarter, maybe.
Yeah, so Florida normally plays at the fourth, Andy?
Yeah, or like in between the two.
They sing "Where the Boys of Old Florida," then "Don't Back Down" plays as they go into the fourth quarter. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it was quite the troll. And of course, Lane Kiffin, a master troll, so I'm sure he enjoyed that very much. But he also did not say no and did not quell any of the speculation, because he was asked about it after the game. He said, "I love Ole Miss. It would be disrespectful to talk about this." Well, there's a way to talk about it in a non-disrespectful way, and that would be, "I'm staying at Ole Miss." But he hasn't said that yet.
Sign the contract. The contract that's probably sitting around the desk somewhere. Yeah.
Someone listen. Y'all, please listen to me. If you're going to incorrectly aggregate anything from this show, Lane is going to make it about Lane for as long as Lane can. Okay. I've said this on the show consistently all year. From the moment that South Florida beat Florida, this was going to be catnip for Lane. And you know what? I'm going to be, I make some CAA jokes sometimes, his representatives and Jimmy Sexton. This is not that. This is Lane loves, he loves mess. He loves the conjecture. He loves being at the focal point of this. And he's not going to stop until he absolutely has to.
Which may not happen for a while.
No, it may not happen through the Egg Bowl.
Yeah, which is going to be interesting. The Egg Bowl, that Ole Miss is playing to host a playoff game, right? And I was just visiting, right? I think we did maybe our last pod, and I was in Starkville, or Tuesday's pod. I was in Starkville. So I went from Tuscaloosa last weekend to Starkville to Oxford, and then flew out of Memphis. But I was in Starkville, just a few hours before I was in Oxford to meet with Lane and Keith Carter and some others for that story on Friday. But let's just say that Mississippi State would love it no better than to make sure there is not a home game, playoff game in Oxford, Mississippi.
So what you're telling me is that they're against revenue for the state. Is that it? You know what, Ross, I want to circle back on this. We have technically mentioned or outright mentioned that the stakes are not normal for the Egg Bowl, for clean old-fashioned hate, and for whatever we call Texas A&M. That is both true and not true. There's no one in the world who thinks that they're going to take that the superior team in the records going in is going to take it off. That Ole Miss has said, "Oh, we're in the playoff. Hey guys, we're going to put our twos in." That's not going to happen in this game. It's clean old-fashioned hate. Honestly, with the way Stockton played last night, he and Haynes King are apparently just going to have like a competition to see which quarterback can embrace the most contact. I think these games still have stakes. They still have meaning, and both teams are still going to play as hard as they always do. I just wanted to mention that. But like this idea that Ole Miss has got it, they have a playoff bid wrapped up now. We can say that, right? Like there's nothing now that can break them.
They play one more game.
Break their
Are they either the 5 or 6 seed, or are they going to be the 10 or 11 seed?
Could you imagine though?
Right.
Yeah. Like playing in and then getting the 5, like we've talked about, and then getting the 12, or having to go on the road and go to like Lubbock. Yeah. That's a massive difference.
Yeah, that's a huge difference. Yep.
Ole Miss because it beat Oklahoma on the road, is in great shape. Ole Miss has to be ranked ahead of Oklahoma. And so
it's true.
It's interesting. We'll see where the committee puts Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and Oregon and Alabama will be very interesting because Alabama has a better resume than Oregon, even though it has one more loss. Oregon doesn't have any quality wins. Yeah.
The problem
Ole Miss has a great win at Oklahoma. Oklahoma has a great win at Alabama. So I think all of those teams are going to be ranked ahead of Oregon because Oregon, the one really good team it played, it lost to.
Right. Yeah. Oregon's resume, they need more than ever to beat USC, right? Because you could see a situation perhaps where Oregon is left out of the playoff, but things break right just because, like if they lose to USC, you could see a situation where the committee says they don't have any good wins at all. I did our top 10 and I have Oregon 7, and I was debating Oklahoma and Oregon 7, 8, and they ended up putting Oregon at 7. But there's a real possibility that if you lose at home to USC and everything breaks right with like Michigan going 10-2 and some of the things falling in place in the SEC, that you could be left out. Now, if you go back to Godfrey's conversation about the last week of the season, and I know we're going to get to this we have plenty of time to get to these games, but it is already looking like a phenomenal slate. And the SEC announced, I think, in the middle of after A&M won, right, that there will not be known the participants of the SEC championship game until after the final week. The games are over on Saturday, and so the drama all the way to Saturday is going to be the last Saturday is going to be really fun. But you have Texas A&M with Texas playing for an outside shot, and A&M obviously playing for a trip to Atlanta, and then Ole Miss playing for a home playoff game. Georgia Tech, you have obviously Georgia Tech playing to probably lock up a playoff spot because if they beat Georgia and even lose in the ACC championship game, they feel like they're in. And then Georgia playing for a home playoff game, probably too, just like in the Ole Miss sort of situation. So Andy segues to Georgia Tech, the ACC, and the craziness going on in that conference.
Yes. Georgia Tech probably is the team with the most control right now. If they beat Pittsburgh, they're in the ACC championship game. Virginia beat Duke, killed the dream of a 4-loss ACC champ.
I know.
That was
darn.
This is my pick.
Yeah. Virginia only has one game left, and it's the Virginia Tech game in the last week of the season. Now they still need a little bit of help. SMU and Louisville is a big game next week. Now Louisville is out because Louisville lost.
They're done. Yeah.
But SMU is not out, and Louisville can spoil things for them. And then you got Miami sitting there with a very, very outside chance. Miami drilled NC State.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a wild last couple of weeks because, if Georgia Tech wins, they're in. If Pitt wins its last 2 games, I think they're in now that Duke has lost. I think that gives them the in if they just win, and they have to beat Georgia Tech and Miami. And then SMU, if they win out, they're in.
We have joked, rightfully, about this nonsense ACC stretch, like starting around Halloween and what we've seen the last couple of weeks. There's 5 teams alive. There's 7 teams alive. Duke could go to the college football playoff with 11 losses or whatever. It's now shaping up that, and by the way, I had more people after our live show come up and ask like any football questions I got there. Like, could someone really jump the ACC? Could like the American champion jump the ACC? After yesterday's games, Andy, you set the table nicely. Not only is Georgia Tech in the driver's seat, they have ranked Pitt and ranked Georgia in front of them before potentially an ACC championship game. They could climb the charts in terms of playoff seeding.
Oh, they could lock it up where they could lose the ACC championship game.
Yeah. But I mean, if they were to win out their regular season schedule and win the ACC, they could enter the playoff a lot higher than we probably thought a couple weeks ago.
It's true.
Hey.
And if they could beat Georgia, if they beat Pitt and Georgia, they are in the playoff. Like they'll be 11-1 going in the ACC championship game. They'll be in. The ACC could be a 2-bid league, but Georgia Tech losing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the only way the ACC could get 2, which would knock off. And BYU, think about BYU's position too. I mean, we could see it where if Georgia Tech does do that and they lose the ACC championship game and BYU upsets Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game, you're talking about two teams from each of those leagues. And guess what? There's going to be 3. That means there's going to be probably 3 Big teams and not a 5th SEC team probably in. That would knock off potentially all of them. What we're going to have,
that'd be a fun year,
of course, a massive chaos, because you're going to have you're going to have like 10 2 or 3 lost teams all bunched up, and they're going to have to pick from them. And good luck.
So Big 12, obviously Texas Tech is in control of its destiny. If they keep winning, they're in the Big 12 championship game. If BYU beats Cincinnati, you will have a Big 12 championship game rematch of last week's Texas Tech BYU game. So hope you enjoyed it. You're going to see it again if BYU wins that Cincinnati game.
Yeah, Houston's still alive. I think Utah technically still alive. No, because they would lose the tiebreaker with BYU. So Houston has an outside chance. But it is shaping up for a BYU rematch. So I don't know if we're all thrilled about that, but
it didn't go so well the first time. So
and by the way,
I can't imagine them scoring. So
it's nothing against BYU. It's just that like that it wasn't appealing the first time out.
The whole the G5 sort of race got thrown a wrench, right?
Total mess.
South Florida basically out after losing, and now it's Tulane in North Texas, in JMU, and
Navy in East Carolina.
JMU has got to be perfect. I don't know if Louisville losing affects them. That's their only loss on their schedule. It'll be very interesting.
It's also the only power conference team they played.
Southern Miss lost to Texas State yesterday, and that has ramifications only that Southern Miss would look a little bit more dinged up going into the hypothetical conference championship there. I'm just trying to build a resume for JMU to leapfrog any American team. It's going to be really, really tough, I think.
Yeah. And then, out west, San Diego State hadn't lost to Hawaii. They kind of be in position too, and then that was a tough one for them, and maybe just knocks them out. It'll be interesting to see what the committee does this week. That'll, to me, that's maybe the most interesting thing this week in the rankings. Yes, where does Alabama fall, as Andy has mentioned, or how far does it fall? But who's the highest ranked G5? I'm guessing Tulane based on the non-conference wins. I'm guessing it will be Tulane, but I don't know.
Yeah, Tulane has wins against Duke and Northwestern, and then they lost to Ole Miss. But they probably have the more impressive resume out of all of those teams in the mix for the Group of Fives. Well, it's not the Group of 5 bid. I don't like calling it that because it's the 5 highest ranked conference champ. So that 5th highest ranked conference champ. So we don't know what the American Championship is going to be, and we won't know for a couple of weeks. So my gut says Tulane, North Texas, but I have no idea right now.
Yeah.
So earlier in the week, I pulled the schedules real fast, and this is before yesterday's outcomes. But you're missing a lot of games that you need right now to determine a consensus American champ. Like Tulane and North Texas don't play each other. South Florida and Tulane don't play each other. ECU and USF don't play each other. North Texas and ECU don't play each other. This is just a weird.
Yeah,
it's just how the schedule fell this year. And so as we go down the stretch, there may be a ton of tiebreakers just to determine that championship game.
Yeah, I mean, if Navy, I got this question the other day. Navy has their final American game because the Army game,
it's after selection.
Count. Yeah, it's after selection and doesn't count in the championship race.
Right.
So Navy's last game is at Memphis next week.
Thanksgiving.
If they win that game, it is on Thanksgiving. Okay. Yeah. It is in 2 weeks. So they get a bye. Okay. If they win that game, it does set up sort of this, and everything else breaks right. I don't know if they control their own destiny. I don't know with Tulane and North Texas and East Carolina. I'm not sure. Who did Navy lose to?
Navy's lost to Notre Dame, and they've lost to North Texas.
North Texas. Okay, North Texas.
Yeah, this is where
North Texas would hold that tiebreaker, and I guess
it gets really complicated. Yesterday, Navy beating South Florida makes this extremely complicated.
Yeah, and it will be more. What I was getting at is it'd be more complicated if Navy does win at Memphis, because not only will they be bunched up for the American standings, but then is the question: if Navy happens to win the American and has this game after selection Sunday with Army, it was made clear, I think it was last spring, everything's running together, it was last spring, where the CFP commissioners met in Dallas, and the only thing they did, or the only decision they made, was to come out and say, basically, we're not going to consider the Army-Navy game. We're going to still select the teams on Selection Sunday, and we'll sort of if Navy's in the mix, if they're the top ranked G5, they'll get the spot, and then they'll play Army, which will be weird, obviously an unusual situation and sort of bizarre, but we're looking at potentially, especially if Navy beats Memphis on Thanksgiving that week, that could happen.
The way that the best way to describe this is because I was embedded with Army for a Navy game. I've spent a lot of time around the service academies. It's a bowl game, okay, or a conference championship game. They are very comfortable with it not mattering or not factoring in. This is just this. They would prefer it this way, so no one involved is going to be mad if this happens. That's what they want. By the way, the team to watch is North Texas with 1 loss overall. They finish with a very manageable schedule. They have Rice and Temple left, so they could go into the championship game with 1 loss overall, which would then completely eliminate someone like JMU if they were to win
the coach of North Texas, of course, Eric Morris, whose name is very much up for several jobs, which leads me to what this week's going to be about. Tuesday's episode, we will have a lot of coaching carousel conversation, because it's going to get interesting. It's going to start speeding up, and we are probably about a week and a half away from some significant movement. And so we'll start getting you ready for that. People like Eric Morris, you need to know that name. You need to know where he might be headed, or if he's going to make the playoffs.
And his quarterback.
If he's going to win a conference championship. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Mestamaker. Let's not forget him. So we'll be talking a lot about the coaching carousel on Tuesday, because it is going to dominate the conversation these next few weeks. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you then.